hir wyn yn mynesawr, pell na bu'n henisawr, treiglais mwyn lawr, cyn bum llenawr, treigleais cynhellus, cynheisus cant ynys, cant cair a thryngus, da'r druon doethyr, darogynwch yn Arthur, ysyd gynt, neir mi ei hynynt, ac yn adar hi o ystyr dilwy.
Croeso, welcome to Cerridwen Cottage. Today you find us by the shore of Llyn Tegid. We are here to tell you the story of Cerridwen. We thought that it might be interesting for you, those of you that follow a pagan path, or those of you that are just interested in Celtic history and folklore, to see the actual locations mentioned in the Legend of Ceridwen and Taliesin. Long ago, in the early days of the reign of King Arthur, by the shores of Llyn Tegid, there lived a giant named Tegid Boel, who the lake was named after, and his wife Cerridwen. Tegid Boel was lord of all the land within sight of the waters. Cerridwen was not just a noble woman, she was a sorceress and the keeper of the cauldron of inspiration. As well as being well versed in the art of divination, enchantment and transformation, the roots of her craft crossed over into Annwn, the other world. Cerridwen and Tegid Boel had 2 children, a daughter Creidwi, fairest maid in all the land, and a son Morfran. As Creidwi was fair, he was foul. Morfran kept to the shadows, emerging only at night, and soon took on a new name, Avag Ddu, the utter darkness. As a loving mother, Cerridwen was desperate to help her son. She consulted all her ancient texts, and then travelled to Annwn, the other world, to seek a cure. Cerridwen was instructed to boil a cauldron of inspiration for a year and a day at the edge of the lake. She gathered herbs according to the phases of the moon to add to the cauldron, along with water from a sacred spring, and set a fire beneath it. The seething mass would transform into a potion of awen, the gift of creative insight, but only if it boiled for a year and a day without ceasing. The first 3 drops of the elixir to be drunk could transform Morfran into the wisest prophet ever known, as well as the ability to shapeshift. However, the rest of the potion would be poison. Cerridwen employed an old man named Morda to keep the fire burning, and a boy Gwion Bach to stir the cauldron night and day for a year and a day. At last, after a year and a day, the potion was ready. Cerridwen excitedly brought her son to drink the 3 magical drops. However, at that moment, 3 drops of the boiling liquid bubbled up and landed on Gwion's hand. Instinctively, the boy brought his hand to his mouth to soothe the burn. In that moment, all the wisdom and power contained within those drops entered him. When Cerridwen saw that Gwion Bach now had the blessings of the potion, and not her son, she flew into a murderous rage. Using the shape-shifting powers he had just acquired, Gwion turned himself into a hare and fled. Cerridwen turned herself into a greyhound and was almost upon him when he leaped into a river and turned himself into a salmon. Cerridwen became an otter and was almost upon him again when Gwion jumped out of the river, and transformed into a wren. Cerridwen carried on her pursuit as a hawk. Just as she was about to swoop down on him, Gwion saw a barn below with a pile of wheat on the ground. Gwion changed shape again into a tiny single grain of wheat. But the raptor's keen eyes hadn't missed this. Cerridwen transformed into a black hen and proceeded to eat every last grain until Gwion was trapped inside her belly. However, that is not the end of the story. For when Cerridwen returned to human form, she realized she was pregnant. At that moment, she resolved to kill the baby the moment it was born. Cerridwen's resolve faltered, however, after she gave birth and held the baby in her arms. He shone like the sun, and contained in his gaze was all the secret wisdom of the earth. Cerridwen could not bear to kill the child, so she placed him in a bag and cast it out onto the waters, to let the fates determine his destiny. For 9 days and nights the baby floated on the waves until Halloween. It was believed at that time that Halloween was a day when those who had bad luck might find a reversal of their fortunes, as it was the time of the Celtic New Year. In those days, between Machynlleth and Aberystwyth, lay the land belonging to Gwyddno. Gwyddno had a son named Elffin, who was the most unlucky of men. Everything he attempted came to naught, and good fortune was never with him. Gwyddno had a salmon weir, and as Halloween was believed to be the luckiest day to gather in the catch, he sent his son to bring in the bounty. In so doing, he hoped to turn around his son's bad fortune. However, when Elffin went to look, there was not a single fish in the weir. Elffin began to turn away, full of despondency, when he noticed a bag snagged in one of the traps. When Elffin opened the bag, he was shocked to find the most beautiful baby, whose brow shone with a radiant light. Elffin named the baby Taliesin, which means radiant brow. As Elffin rode home, the baby began first to speak and then to recite poetry. The poem he recited, Elffin, told him that Taliesin was sent to guide him, that he was not only a great poet but also a prophet. Elffin's luck changed thereafter, and he prospered until the day he died. Taliesin became the greatest bard in the country. Taliesin was a real person and lived between 534 and 599 AD. There is a 6th century parchment of one of his poems at Jesus College in Oxford. His poetry was thought to have inspired the Celtic warriors of Britain in their struggle against the Saxon invaders. We thought you would be interested to see Beddh Taliesin, Taliesin's grave. Here it is, standing high in the mountains above the estuary he was supposed to have been discovered in as a baby. Going back to Cerridwen, for pagans, she is thought of as being both mother and crone. She is closely associated with the moon and is the goddess of rebirth and transformation. There are theories among some scholars that Cerridwen's cauldron is in fact the Holy Grail, which King Arthur spent his life searching for. This is a beautiful waterfall very close by to Beddh Taliesin, to Taliesin's grave, which we couldn't walk by without filming to show you. We had wanted to do some cosy shots of our Samhain, but unfortunately last week the cottage flooded quite badly. That's the the downside of living so close to a beautiful but very powerful river, which is also why this video is coming out later than we had hoped. But before we flooded, we did manage to quickly make a pumpkin pie, a vegan pumpkin pie. And if you're interested in making it, we'll put the link to the recipe down below. We hope that you all had a beautiful and magical Samhain. Bright blessings.